the 19th of November, Ukraine fired long-range missiles provided by the US and UK into Russia for the first time. Ukraine used the Army Tactical Missile System, known as ATACMS, to strike an ammunition storage facility in Russia's Bryansk region. The strike came just days after President Biden gave approval for their use. That's not all. After the ATACMS attack, the Ukrainian military also fired 10 Storm Shadow missiles for the first time. After 1 week of silence, the White House admitted that it gave the go-ahead to Ukraine to use its missiles on the Kursk region. On the 21st of November, Russia retaliated. It fired an intermediate-range ballistic missile at Ukraine.
Системами Storm Shadow производства Великобритании и HIMARS производства США.
In a televised address, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the country has the right to use its weapons on other nations that allowed their weapons to be used against Russia.
В ответ на применение американского и британского дальнобойного оружия 21 ноября текущего года российские вооруженные силы нанесли комбинированный удар по одному из объектов оборонно-промышленного комплекса Украины. В боевых условиях было проведено в том числе и испытание одной из новейших российских ракетных систем средней дальности. В данном случае с баллистической ракетой в безъядерном гиперзвуковом оснащении. Наши ракетчики назвали ее «Орешник». Испытания прошли успешно. Цель пуска достигнута.
Russia continues to pound Ukraine. In the last week, Russian military has increased the intensity of the attacks, firing missiles, glide bombs, and swarms of drones.
Викликали швидку допомогу, тому що дитина також злякалася, тому що воно
We called an ambulance because my nephew got scared as the explosion happened so close to the house. The medics had a look at him and as of now he's doing fine. The house was damaged and my nephew was born under a lucky star. But the damage to the house and its surroundings are extensive.
І прибудинкова територія також дуже пошкоджена.
Throughout the history of warfare, the role of war machinery has been crucial in shifting battle strategies. Infantry, whether traditional, mechanized or robotic, continues to determine territorial control and battlefield outcomes. In the 1,000-day fight between Russia and Ukraine since 2022, war machinery has taken center stage. From hand-to-hand combat in urban zones like Donetsk to larger mechanized assaults in Kursk, both sides are vying for supremacy. So, how has technology changed in the battlefield? How warfare machinery in Russia and Ukraine continue to evolve since 2022, and is the war entering into a new phase? We decode these and more in this episode of WION Wideangle. On the 19th of November, Russian news agencies reported that Ukraine launched an attack on their Bryansk region overnight with 6 US-made ATACMS long-range missiles. Russian air defense systems claimed to have intercepted 5 of these missiles and damaged 1. Debris from one missile fell on a military facility in the region. Ukraine has been using the Army Tactical Missile System, or ATACMS, on Russian targets in occupied Ukrainian territory for more than a year. But the US had never allowed Kyiv to use ATACMS inside Russia until now, fearing it would escalate the war. But in the past few days, Washington has changed its stance. The White House gave the green signal and said Kyiv can use the 190-mile range weapons on an immediate need basis. And right now, understandably, that's taken place in and around Kursk. This move is said to be in response to the recent arrival of North Korean troops to support Russia in the Kursk region. In August, Ukrainian forces staged an incursion into Kursk, but they had been facing a fierce fight to hold on to territory after Moscow reportedly deployed tens of thousands of its troops to the border region, including personnel from North Korea.
Вибачте, без зайвих деталей. У України є далекобійні можливості, у України є далекобійні дрони свого власного виробництва. У нас тепер є довгий Нептун, і не один, і тепер у нас є ATACMS. І ми все це будемо використовувати.
So what is the Army Tactical Missile System the US has sent to Ukraine, and what effect will the missiles have on the battlefield? The Army Tactical Missile System is a surface-to-surface ballistic missile built by the defense manufacturer Lockheed Martin. It has the capability of hitting targets at up to 300 kilometers. ATACMS are fired from either the tracked M270 Multiple Launch Rocket System, or MLRS, or the wheeled M142 High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, popularly known as HIMARS. ATACMS are fueled by solid rocket propellant and follow a ballistic path into the atmosphere. They come down at a high speed and high angle, making it difficult to intercept. These missiles were first used in the Gulf War of 1991, and since then have been around for decades. The US Army plans to replace it with the next-generation precision strike missile that can target a range of 500 kilometers. However, there is no suggestion Ukraine will be getting these. The new policy of using ATACMS to attack targets inside Russia might be beneficial to Ukraine. Ukraine may use ATACMS to target Russian positions, including military bases, infrastructure, and ammunition storage. But Moscow has already repositioned its strategic assets. Reports suggest that Moscow has moved its weapon depots away from the range of ATACMS.
І оце отримання такого
Obtaining such a permit, even partially, even in such a limited, truncated manner, even if limited to the Kursk region, it is still something that strengthens our capability.
тобто посилює наші спроможності.
Experts say that Ukraine's ability to strike Russian targets will not be a game changer.
It does make a real difference if you can hit Russian supply lines and the Russian and Russian troop gatherings inside Russia. Then you are hugely limiting Russia's ability to mobilize against you and to attack. So it's an enormous step. The Ukrainians are hugely relieved, but it's not a game changer as far as the war is concerned. What is a game changer is a combination of little things, including this one.
Russia responded to the attacks through a series of missile strikes on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro on the 21st of November. The explosions were said to have gone on for at least 3 hours, and the attack included a strike by an extremely powerful missile. In the aftermath, Ukrainian officials said it had characteristics similar to that of an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM. There was confusion in the western capitals. Later, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that the attack was carried out by a new conventional intermediate-range missile.
Повторю, испытания в боевых условиях ракетной системы «Орешник» проводятся нами в ответ на агрессивные действия стран НАТО в отношении России.
The missile is codenamed Orenshik, meaning hazel tree in Russian. The Kremlin said the attack is a message to the West that Moscow will respond harshly to any reckless Western actions in support to Ukraine. So what exactly is the Orenshik missile? Orenshik is a hypersonic ballistic missile. According to Russian authorities, the nuclear-capable weapon can travel 10 times the speed of sound and can't be intercepted. The missile's range is 5,000 kilometers, allowing Russia to strike most of Europe and the west coast of the United States. It has multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, separate warheads able to hit different targets. It can carry 6 to 8 conventional or nuclear warheads. The Pentagon claims that the missile is based on the RS-26 Rubesh Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM. Analysts say that the Orenshik is capable of overcoming any existing modern missile defense systems. It could also destroy well-protected bunkers at great depths without using a nuclear warhead. The missile was fired on Ukraine, but the message was to the West. Ukrainian intelligence suggests the Orenshik could strike deep into NATO territory, reaching Poland within 12 minutes and the UK within 20 minutes of launch. This development could force Western nations to revise their military support for Ukraine, including air defense capabilities. Putin's remarks about targeting Western nations supplying Ukraine with weapons signal a potential escalation into a more extensive regional conflict.
This is a weapon with very little military utility, and it's not even particularly useful for Russia's secondary aims of killing civilians in Ukraine and destroying their homes. Instead, it's a demonstration, and of course it's backed up with these threats by Putin that those countries helping Ukraine could find themselves targeted as well in the future.
Well, I think people should be worried. They're right to worry. I mean, we're in a very difficult situation, and certainly the escalatory cycle, if you want, is moving on. We see this now. Things have happened that were unimaginable 2 years ago or 3 years ago in Europe. So there's certainly reason to worry. The decision or the renewal of the nuclear doctrine in Russia, I think also, of course, happened in the context of this war. But it is a signaling device, right, to tell the West, all right, these are our red lines. We want to reestablish deterrence.
Apart from ATACMS, Ukraine has also used Storm Shadow missiles against targets inside Russia. These long-range missiles have been supplied to Ukraine by the United Kingdom. Storm Shadow is a cruise missile developed by the UK and France in the 1990s. Manufactured by MDBA, a European multinational corporation, it has a maximum range of 250 kilometers. It first launched from an aircraft. Then it flies at close to the speed of sound before dropping down and detonating its high explosive warhead. It is considered an ideal weapon for penetrating hardened bunkers and ammunition stores. The price of one missile is nearly $1 million. The UK has supplied Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine for months, but like the US, had not allowed Kyiv to use them to strike inside Russia. But this changed after the Biden administration updated its rules. From the beginning of the war in February 2022, Ukraine has been heavily dependent on military machines donated by Western nations. From tanks such as ABRAM and Challenger 2 combat vehicles to air defense systems to drones and F-16 fighter jets, Kyiv has received more than $100 billion of military aid so far. whereas Russia's military has been reliant on a crucial resource from its past Soviet-era stockpiles and has been rapidly deploying modern war machines on the battlefield. Let's look at who has supplied the most military aid to Ukraine. According to the German think tank the Kiel Institute, between February 2022 and the end of August 2024, the United States gave $61.1 billion. It has been Ukraine's biggest source of military aid in terms of providing weapons, equipment and financial assistance. Germany has given $11.4 billion, the UK $10.1 billion, Denmark $7 billion and the Netherlands $5.5 billion. This year, in July, Ukraine also received the delivery of the first batch of F-16 fighter jets from the West, 29 months after the Russian invasion. The Netherlands, which has also promised to deliver 24 F-16s directly to Ukraine, has been one of the driving forces behind an international coalition to supply Ukraine with F-16s to strengthen its air defense against Russia. The F-16s have been on Ukraine's wish list for a long time because of their ability to shoot down incoming missiles. But experts say long delay and lack of trained pilots can undo the advantage against Russia. On the other hand, Moscow continues to rely on Su-34 aircraft and Ka-52 helicopters in the battle zones. On the ground, too, Russia continues to charge with Soviet machinery, but with new additions suited for the Ukrainian battlefields. This is a Russian turtle tank, an indigenous invasion, adding sheets which helps to deflect incoming drones and help in better camouflage. Russia has also deployed flamethrowers like these, which have a devastating effect on Ukrainian frontline positions. Let's look at how the weapons and military expenditures have changed in the last 3 years. The war has pushed both countries to increase their defense spending exponentially. In the first 9 months of the war, Russia had spent $82 billion, which is a quarter of its annual budget. By 2023, this figure had soared to over $100 billion. Defense spending will rise to 13.5 trillion rubles, or 145 billion in 2025, up 25% from the 2024 level. On the 1000th day of the war, Ukraine's parliament approved the 2025 state budget, channeling more funds for Kyiv's defense efforts. Ukraine plans to spend $53.7 billion, or about 26% of its gross domestic product, on defense and security the next year. Zelensky even said that $18 billion from the state budget will be allocated for drones in Ukraine in 2025. One of the most dramatic fields has been the war of drones. Ukraine in 2024 has allocated $2 billion to produce at least 1 million first-person view or FPV drones. These are drones equipped with cameras that provide live video feed to remote pilots, giving Ukrainian troops a new edge in surveillance and striking capabilities. In addition to FPV drones, Ukraine has heavily invested in producing its own arsenal of drones. Ukraine has been using naval drones, which has destroyed many Russian ships in the Black Sea. It is also using Turkish-made Bayraktar drones to thwart Russian forces by destroying armored vehicles and artillery systems. Russia, on the other hand, have reportedly used drones supplied by Iran, such as the Shahed drones. The kamikaze drone, the Iranian loitering munition, is packed with explosives and is employed as a miniature cruise missile. This was the drone that was often used to target Ukrainian power stations. The fully autonomous lethal weapon systems have led to an arms race in artificial intelligence as well. Ukraine has deployed robotic dogs in combat, marking the first use of such machines on the battlefield. These remote-controlled robots, made by the UK company Brit Alliance, are used for reconnaissance in areas where drones can't reach, such as inside buildings and dense forests. Capable of running up to 14 kilometers per hour, these robots help locate booby traps and Russian forces. They are priced between $4,200 and $8,400 depending on the model. While drones and long-range missiles have redefined the conflict, on the 1000th day of the war, Russian President Vladimir Putin approved the changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine. Now, any attack on Russia from a non-nuclear state, if backed by a nuclear-armed power, will be treated as a joint assault on Russia. Moscow has asserted that it is doing everything to avoid a nuclear war. Putin's move is seen as a warning to the West that any further military support for Ukraine could result in a harsh response from Moscow. Moscow warned that the reports in American media about the Biden administration mulling the transfer of nuclear weapons to Ukraine is reckless, and it would severely inflame the situation. As Joe Biden prepares to hand the power to Donald Trump in the coming months, the dynamics of the war could change too. The president-elect has been reluctant to provide US military aid to Ukraine and has been fiercely critical of NATO. Donald Trump has promised to end the war in a day. This is making Kyiv nervous. Its Western allies are also bracing for impact.